Hey guys, so I wanted to do a quick video to talk to you more about how I make my Bulletproof coffee and why I drink it every single morning. My name is Amanda Nybert. I'm a registered dietitian specializing in bariatric and weight loss nutrition, and my goal is to provide relevant nutritional strategies to help you stay on track or get back on track with your weight loss. So one of the things that I do every morning is incorporate the Bulletproof coffee into my daily fast. I get a lot of questions about the Bulletproof coffee. How do you make it? I get a lot of questions about why the Bulletproof coffee doesn't break your fast or why you can consume it during your fasting period. So I wanted to do a brief video to kind of answer those two main questions. The biggest reason why we incorporate, or why I personally incorporate Bulletproof coffee in my morning, is because A, it reduces my hunger and cravings. It helps me sustain a longer fast. B, it gives me steady energy that's lasting. So with the Bulletproof coffee, it is quality coffee. It is grass-fed butter. It is brain octane. Those are the three key ingredients. The butter is important in the coffee because the butter helps to reduce the absorption of the caffeine. It slows down the absorption of caffeine. So you don't get that caffeine real spike that you get with like a big cup of coffee and then that crash, because the butter slows down the absorption of caffeine and it gives you a much steadier state of energy over a much longer period of time. So that's beneficial. Reduce our hunger, reduce our cravings, and increase our energy, sustaining energy over time. And then the third reason why I personally use it is because of increased mental clarity. The Bulletproof coffee, specifically the Xct Oil, specifically the brain octane, rapidly converts the Xct Oil to ketones, and the brain loves to use ketones, and therefore you have more clarity, you feel more sharp and alert when you use the Bulletproof coffee. So let's talk about what's in the coffee, in the daily Bulletproof coffee. So ideally you're going to start with a really quality coffee. This is probably the one step that I will fudge a little bit more than others. Ideally, you can read more about the Bulletproof coffee. It is a mold-free, chemical-free, just high-quality coffee bean that you can purchase from them. But I will use whatever quality coffee I can get my hands on, and then a lot of times I'm just going to use whatever coffee I can find. So if I do mix up anything with my recipe, it will be my coffee. But I generally start with a cup of coffee. Now, my personal Bulletproof coffee is 22 ounces. So I make one of these full every day. I like to keep it in a Yeti. It keeps it nice and hot, and I can drink it over about 3 to 4 hours. So I drink it slowly throughout the morning. I incorporate my water kind of in between, but you'll see my recipe is going to call for 22 ounces of coffee. Now, you may not drink that much coffee. You may use less coffee. That's fine. You find the recipe that works best for you. So it starts with just black coffee. That's all you need. The second ingredient is grass-fed butter. This is the Kerrygold butter. It is the most readily available grass-fed butter on the market. It's basically grass-fed butter. I mean, butter's not fed, but it's made from cows that solely live on grass. They are grass-fed, they are grass-finished, and then they create a butter. And the reason why we focus on such a high-quality butter is because it's much more nutritious. So grass-fed butter is higher in essential nutrients. It has more omega-3 fatty acids, more beta-carotene. It's loaded with our fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. It also has CLAs, which is a powerful antioxidant. And this is all good stuff that you're not going to find in traditional conventional butter. So that's why we choose the grass-fed butter. The other reason why the butter is so important is because it's high in butyrate. And butyrate really helps to reduce inflammation in the body. And we know that inflammation is the foundation of everything, the foundation of disease, cancer, illness. So anytime that we can reduce inflammation in the body, the better. So we start with grass-fed, really quality butter. I have found in most grocery stores, you're gonna find this kind of in the deli section. It's more with the cheeses than it is with the actual butter, but it's kind of popping up everywhere. So look for the grass-fed butter. Also make sure you get unsalted. Salty coffee does not taste good. The next ingredient is the brain octane, okay? This is probably the step that people fudge on the most, and it's probably the step that I feel like is the most important. And the reason why we use the brain octane is for several reasons. So I'll hear a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I'm drinking Bulletproof coffee, I use butter and I use coconut oil. You are not gonna get the same results with butter and coconut oil. The benefit of the Bulletproof coffee is in the Mct oil, the medium chain triglycerides. Coconut oil is only made up of 25% Mct oil. So you're basically getting 25% of the benefits, and then you're consuming about 75% of stuff that's probably not really gonna help you do anything. So I wanna consume 100% of what is gonna be beneficial. So coconut oil is not a great substitution for the brain octane. The second step will be people will not use coconut oil, but they will use just a traditional MCT oil. And there's a lot of issues with just using a straight MCT oil. So when we talk about MCT oils, actually there are 4 different strands of MCTs, medium chain triglycerides. We have C6, C8, C10, and C12. They're all different and they all do different things. Some are good for you, some are bad for you. So when you buy MCT oil, you're not really gonna be sure 100% what you're getting. It can be a mixture of all 4. It could be one versus the other. So that's the downfall of using just plain old generic MCT oil. So let's talk about the 4 different strands of MCTs. So we have the our first strand is C6, and it is very poorly tasting. It's not used a lot because it's not very palatable, and it creates a lot of GI issues. So occasionally you will see most MCT oils will use somewhere between like 1 or 2% of the C6, and that small percentage could be what's causing GI issues if you've tried Bulletproof in the past and it did not settle well in your stomach. So we want to try to stay away from C6. The next one is C8. This is the good one. This is the best one. The C8, this is 100% C8. Capillaric acid, 100%. It doesn't have anything else in it. That's what the brain octane is. Now the C8 is good because it converts to ketones within minutes of consuming it. Ketones are good because ketones reduce your ghrelin, which reduces your hunger. It increases your CCK, which makes you feel full, and it forces the body to burn fat. Anytime ketones are present, we're burning fat. So that's the benefit of the Bulletproof coffee, is that it increases ketone production. And we want as many ketones as possible so that we're burning as much fat as possible. So the C8 does that within minutes. And that's why you see such a spike in ketone production when you're consuming a product like the brain octane versus when you're consuming just a straight MCT oil, and even worse, just a straight kind of coconut oil. There's also C10, which takes longer to convert to ketones, so you don't see as big a spike as you do with the C8, but it's still beneficial. It's much cheaper to produce than the C8. So the version down from the brain octane is their Xct Oil. And the Xct Oil from the Bulletproof brand is a blend of C8 and C10. It's a little bit more cost efficient. It's not as expensive, but you don't quite get the ketone production as you do the brain octane. And this is my thing. If I'm gonna do something that is going to give me benefits, I want to do it to its greatest capacity, you know? I don't want to kind of halfway do it. So if I've got to spend a couple of extra dollars to get the best results, then it's worth it in my book. But if you need to save money, but you still want to see good results, try the Xct Oil. That's a blend of the C8 and the C10. The final MCT medium chain triglyceride that is available is C12, and that is Lauric Acid. And this is probably the most controversial MCT chain out there because technically it really should not be a medium chain triglycerides. It was denoted to be a medium chain triglyceride arbitrarily. Just a scientist thought that if it only had 12 chains, that it should be considered a medium chain versus a long chain triglyceride. But it acts more like a long chain triglyceride than it does a medium chain triglyceride. So let's talk about lauric acid. First of all, it's cheap and it is abundant in coconut oil, okay? So you get a lot of it in coconut oil and it's not expensive to produce. It does not break down into ketones unless you are on a super low carb diet. Okay, let me say that again. It does not break down into ketones unless you're on a super low carb diet. So there could potentially be zero benefits in using a product that has a high consumption of lauric acid, C12, versus the brain octane, the C8, produces ketones within minutes, even in the presence of carbohydrates. And that's the key. That's the trick. Anytime you have ketones present, you are essentially in ketosis. Ketosis is just the state of the body burning fat as energy versus carbs and sugars. So it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. To get in a state of ketosis is challenging. You have to be on a super low carb diet for multiple days to get the body into ketosis. What the C8, what the brain octane does, is it mimics ketosis. It produces those ketones, so even in the presence of carbohydrates, you are burning fat, and that's huge, okay? C12, lauric acid, you don't see that. Ketones are not produced unless you're doing a low carb diet. So even more the reason to, again, consider the brain octane. So you want to find a product, whether it be the brain octane or whatever, that's going to be the most abundant in the C8. That's what we want to choose, and that's why I stick with this, because it's going to give me the biggest results. So I've got my butter, I've got my MCT oil, specifically C8, specifically brain octane, maybe a combination of the C8, C10, but I'm not going to use coconut oil, and I'm not just going to use, an inexpensive brand of MCT oil. I'm going to stick with these two things. So how do we make bulletproof coffee? So we make bulletproof coffee. Basically, I brew my coffee, and then I'm going to pour this in there. Again, for my recipe, I use 1 tablespoon of butter, and I use 1 tablespoon of brain octane to 22 ounces of coffee. Now you may only drink 8 ounces of coffee. So you may only use a half a tablespoon of butter and a half a tablespoon of brain octane. I feel like one recipe for the bulletproof coffee is the 1-to-1, the 1 tablespoon to the 1 tablespoon of butter to the 1 tablespoon of the brain octane. So you may spread that out over a couple of cups throughout the morning. You may make 1 big cup like I do. You may just use half and half. It's whatever you want to do. I don't think that it's ideal to drink multiple cups of bulletproof throughout the day unless you're extending your fast, say to 24 hours. If I do a 24-hour fast, excuse me, then I may drink 1 in the morning, and then I may drink 1 in the afternoon because I'm extending my fast for 24 hours. Most days I fast for 18 hours, so I just do 1 in the morning and I'm perfectly good. So the Kerrygold butter, it does have these little tabs, so you know exactly what 1 tablespoon is. And then I'm going to do a tablespoon of my brain octane. pour that in there. And then I'm gonna blend it up. Now, people think like butter and coffee, ooh, that's not oil in your coffee. Oh, that sounds gross. But let me just tell you this, okay? So I'm gonna look at my butter, okay? And I'm gonna look at the ingredients. And this has one ingredient, and it is pasteurized cream. That's all butter is. Butter is just cream. So if you put creamer or cream in your coffee, you're essentially putting something just like butter in it. So it's not that crazy, I promise. And the butter makes it really nice and creamy. So I'm gonna blend it up for about 15-20 seconds, really quick. It is important that you blend the coffee in a blender. You really want to break down the butter, break down the MCT oil, and get them nice and mixed together. If you stir it, it just does not incorporate it, okay? It doesn't emulsify it enough than if you actually blend it. And you see, once you blend it, you get this really delicious, sorry about that. So you'll see that when you blend it up, you get this really delicious, creamy, it's got a nice little froth on the top. It's so good. Sometimes I'll put a little vanilla in there, a little vanilla extract. Sometimes I'll put a little cinnamon in there. But it's the perfect morning fix. Now, the reason why Bulletproof coffee is allowed during your fast is because it mimics the benefits of fasting, okay? So we usually say anything over 40 calories will break your fast, you know, when I'm working with my clients in my programs, just to kind of make it easy and straight across the board. So a lot of times when we talk about doing the Bulletproof coffee, they're like, wait a minute, the Bulletproof coffee is like 200 calories. Why does that not break your fast? So again, because the brain octane is forcing the body to produce ketones, you are burning fat. And that's what the benefit of the fasting is the fasting forces the body to break down in your fat stores. So this is kind of like a double dose of that. It will help you extend your fast. It will help increase ketone production, which will help you burn more fat. And it's going to make you more clear-headed, you know, no brain fog, you know, no weakness, fatigue, kind of getting through that fast. So I encourage you to give it a try. You'll probably like it. I do encourage you to buy quality ingredients. I don't think that this is a product that you should skimp on. I think that you should invest in the best ingredients to get the best outcome. So hopefully that is helpful with letting you understand more about the Bulletproof coffee, and you can make a better decision in terms of if this is something to add to your diet. I will say I only use the Bulletproof coffee if I'm fasting. If I'm not fasting, then I will just use, you know, black coffee. And then if I find that I go lots and lots of days without fasting, again, I think the Bulletproof coffee is best used in combination with the intermittent fasting. So it's not something that you want to load on top of a really unhealthy diet and, you know, unhealthy eating habits, because it will add up. Secondly, I will also give myself a break every couple of months from the Bulletproof coffee. I'll go back to my black coffee. I do think that the bottom line is that in a fasted state, the least you can do, the better. You know, black coffee, water, unsweet tea is going to give you the best fasting results. But if you struggle to stay in that fasted state, if you have hunger and cravings, if you are weak and kind of fog-headed, then the Bulletproof coffee is a great thing to add. And I've been drinking it every morning for the past year and love it. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks, guys.